The ICU at night never really slept. Monitors hummed and beeped, ventilators sighed in mechanical rhythm, and the overhead lights stayed just bright enough to remind everyone that this wasn't a place where people came to rest. It was a place where people came to either fight or fade. Erin had been on night shift long enough to recognize the difference between the two. On that particular Thursday night, she was assigned to bed 9, one of the isolation rooms at the end of the hall. The glass door was half-frosted, the kind of privacy stripes that gave the illusion of separation without truly hiding anything. At report, the day nurse gave her the rundown. Bed 9, Daniel Reese, 46, the nurse said, rubbing her eyes. Massive GI bleed, multiple transfusions, hypotensive, pressors titrated. Intubated this morning, extubated this afternoon. He's awake, oriented, but wiped out. How many units so far? Erin asked. 8 since admission, the nurse replied. Maybe 9 by now. He's O positive, cross-match compatible with what's in the fridge. Hemoglobin keeps dipping. GI still hasn't found the exact source. She hesitated, then added in a lower voice, he's a little weird coming out of the transfusions. Mood swings, odd comments. Could be hypoxia, could be exhaustion. Just document carefully. Weird wasn't new in the ICU. People woke up from sedation saying things that made no sense all the time. Delirium, hallucinations, half-remembered dreams. Erin nodded, accepted the chart, and headed down the hall. Bed 9's room glowed with that particular ICU light. Too white, too clean, too sharp. Daniel Reese lay propped up in the bed, pale against the sheets. Dark hair damp with sweat, stubble shading his jaw. His eyes were open and tracking the television, silently playing some late-night show with the volume off. A half-empty unit of packed red blood cells hung from the four-pole, tubing snaking into the central line at his neck. The pump clicked steadily, infusing red life into an already tired body. Erin knocked lightly on the frame as she entered. Mr. Reese. He turned his head slowly. Yeah. His voice was hoarse but steady. I'm Erin, your nurse tonight, she said. I've got you until 7 in the morning. He studied her for a second, as if trying to decide how much effort she was worth. That's a long time, he muttered. Hopefully I'm still here for the second half of it. She offered a small, controlled smile. That's the plan. How are you feeling right now? Any chest pain? Trouble breathing? Dizziness? He shook his head. Just tired. Like I ran a marathon I don't remember signing up for. His vitals were holding, blood pressure soft but stable on low-dose pressors, heart rate elevated but not alarming, oxygen saturation acceptable on nasal cannula. The blood bag above him was almost empty. You're finishing this unit now, she said, checking the pump. Once it's done, I'll flush the line and recheck your labs in a couple of hours. Has anyone talked to you about more transfusions tonight? He exhaled. They said I'm leaking faster than they'd like. So yeah, more bags, more red. She adjusted his nasal cannula, smoothed a wrinkle in the sheet, and did her assessment: heart, lungs, abdomen, neuro. He was sharp, oriented, sarcastic in that way some ICU patients were when they weren't quite ready to admit they were scared. What do you do for a living? She asked, making small talk as she checked his foresight. Construction, he said. Heavy work, long hours. Always figured if something got me, it'd be a fall. Or a crane. Not bleeding from the inside for no damn reason. As the blood finished infusing, Erin disconnected the tubing, flushed the line, and checked the unit number against the chart to sign it off. Unit hashtag B4927, O positive, donor ID string she didn't bother to read all the way through. Cross-match documented. No reaction recorded. Any itching? Chills? Back pain? She asked, running through the transfusion reaction checklist. No, he said. Just feel heavy, but in a good way, like someone finally filled the tank. She left to chart, already knowing that GI had ordered at least 2 more units to be available that night if his hemoglobin dipped again. In the blood bank fridge, the labels lined up in neat red rows: B4928, B4935, B4941. Each bag a stranger's filtered donation, barcoded and categorized, ready to drip into whichever failing body needed it most. Around midnight, the lab called with his new labs. Hemoglobin dropped again, the charge nurse said, reading off the results. 6.6. GI wants another unit in now and one on standby. Blood bank is sending up #B4935 next. Aaron hung the new bag on the pole, careful with the spike, purging air from the line. The blood slid through the tubing in slow, dark waves. "You're getting another unit," she told Daniel. "Should help with the fatigue." "Different bag?" he asked, eyes half-lidded. "Different donor, same type," she answered, priming the pump. "Still O positive, still compatible." He was quieter this time as it started. 10 minutes into the infusion, his heart rate eased down a few points. His color seemed to improve fractionally, as if someone had painted a faint wash of life back into his cheeks. He stared at the ceiling, lips moving silently. "You okay?" Aaron asked. "I'm thinking," he said slowly, "about church." It was an odd word to hear in the ICU at midnight. "Are you religious?" she asked. He frowned like he didn't recognize the concept. "No, I haven't set foot in a church since I was a kid. My family's not like that. But right now, I keep seeing stained glass." He described it in surprising detail. "Blue and red and gold," he murmured. "Light coming through like God's watching, choir singing, smell of candles. I know the hymn. I can hear it." "Maybe you're remembering something from when you were younger," Aaron suggested. "I'm not," he said, eyes unfocused. "These aren't my memories." The pump clicked softly, pushing more blood into his vein. Aaron checked his vitals again. Still stable. No reactions. Pulse a little slower, respirations a little deeper. "Think you can sleep?" she asked. "I don't want to," he answered. "Feels like if I close my eyes, I'm going to wake up somewhere else I've never been but somehow deserve." It was the kind of thing stressed patients said sometimes. Strange, poetic, half delirious. She documented the transfusion, his response, his comment, and moved on to her other patients. 2 hours later, the lab called again. His hemoglobin had bumped, then dipped. GI was still worried. The order remained: continue transfusions as needed. By 3 a.m., another unit, #B4941, was hanging on Daniel's pole. This time, the change started faster. As the dark red seeped into his line, his jaw clenched. His fingers twitched against the blanket. A furrow carved itself between his brows. "Pain?" Aaron asked, ready for a reaction. "No," he said through his teeth. "Anger." She blinked. "At what?" "At him," Daniel said, eyes hardening. "At the man who did this. Put me here." Aaron frowned. "You mean the doctor?" "No," he snapped. "The one in the car. The drunk. The guy who blew the red light and walked away while my wife." He cut himself off like someone had yanked a plug in his head. His chart said GI bleed, no trauma. No mention of a car accident. No mention of a wife. "Are you talking about something that happened to you?" she asked carefully. Daniel's eyes clouded with confusion. I don't know. I don't drink. I don't even drive much. I don't have a wife." He looked at his own hands like they belonged to someone else. "Whose memory was that?" he asked. The pump kept clicking, delivering every drop of #B4941 into his bloodstream while the monitors watched him passively. In green and white and numbers, that something inside him was changing in ways no lab test could capture. By 3:30 a.m., the ICU had settled into that heavy quiet that only comes after too many alarms and not enough sleep. 2 doors down, someone coughed wetly in their sleep. The ventilator in bed 5 sighed in regular bursts. A monitor at the far end of the hall chimed once, then silenced itself as another nurse adjusted a setting. Aaron kept glancing at bed 9's glass door. Daniel was awake. That by itself wasn't strange. Lots of ICU patients couldn't sleep. But it was the way he was awake that bothered her. Too alert, too focused, like he was waiting for someone to walk into a room only he could see. When she stepped in to check vitals, he didn't look at her at first. He was staring at his own hands. "Do you feel okay?" she asked. watching the pump count down the last milliliters of unit #B4941. "They feel wrong," he said slowly, "like they've done things I don't remember." He flexed his fingers, knuckles whitening. "Did you have pain just now?" Aaron asked. "Before I walked in? I had rage," he answered, "like I wanted to put my hands around somebody's throat." I could see his face. I could smell the alcohol. I could hear metal glass sirens. I can still hear a woman screaming my name. He paused. "My name isn't the one she was calling." Aaron watched him carefully. "You understand where you are?" she asked. "You know your name, today's date?" "ICU," he said. "Hospital. I'm Daniel Reese. It's Friday, technically." He got the basics right just like before, but his eyes didn't look like the same man she'd met at the beginning of the shift. She finished the transfusion, flushed the line, and updated the chart. No fever, no hives, no back pain, no classic signs of a transfusion reaction. Just emotional storms that didn't fit his history. At the nurse's station, she flagged his chart with a note. Point reports vivid intrusive memories/feelings that do not match his life history after units #B4935 and #B4941. No physical signs of reaction. Monitor mental status. "Getting existential in there?" A respiratory therapist joked lightly as he passed. Aaron looked up. "You ever seen transfusions do weird things to people's heads?" she asked. "You mean like after big blood loss?" he replied. "Sure. Hypoxia, metabolic whack, pain meds, ICU delirium. People say all kinds of things." "Not delirious," she said. "He's alert, oriented. But every time we hang a new bag, it's like his mood comes from somewhere else." The RT shrugged. "Blood's just cells and protein. It's not a soul. Don't let night shift get to you." Easy to say, she thought, when you weren't the one hanging the bags. Around 4:15 a.m., lab dropped another set of results into the system. His hemoglobin had climbed, then dipped again, still low, still not where GI wanted it. The charge nurse called the blood bank. "We need another unit for Reese in bed 9. O positive. Send up the next available." "We're running low on O positive," the tech on the other end said. "We have one more unit from the batch we've been using, B4954. After that, we'll have to pull from the general supply." "Send B4954, the charge nurse said, "and put a hold on one more from general." Aaron took the new bag down the hall. Unit #B4954. This time, Daniel was asleep. She checked his vitals. Stable. She started the infusion. 10 minutes later, he woke up with a gasp. He wasn't angry. He wasn't sad. He was terrified. His eyes were wide, fixed on the ceiling, but seeing something far beyond the acoustic tiles. "What is it?" Aaron asked, moving quickly to his side. He didn't answer. He just started making a low, desperate sound. A choked, gurgling noise that was more water than air. "Mr. Reese, are you choking?" He shook his head violently, eyes still fixed above. He pointed a trembling finger at the ceiling. "The water," he whispered, his voice thin and high. "It's cold. It's dark. I can't get out." He thrashed against the restraints of the bed, his body arching. "I'm stuck," he cried. "The boat. It went down. I'm stuck under the hull. I can't breathe. I can't find the light." Aaron hit the call light. "I need help in bed 9. Patient thrashing. Acute distress." The charge nurse and the RT ran in. "What's his O2? 92 and dropping. He's not breathing right. He's not choking, he's drowning." Aaron yelled, though the room was dry. They worked to calm him, to reassure him, to check his airway and his lines. It took 5 minutes and a small dose of a sedative to bring him back to the room, back to the ICU, back to Daniel Reese. When he finally settled, he was sobbing, tears running down his temples into his hair. "I was under the water," he whispered. "I was trapped. I could feel the cold. I could hear the metal groaning. I was drowning." "You're safe," Aaron said, holding his hand. "You're in the hospital. You're safe." He looked at the 4-pole, at the bag of blood slowly dripping into his arm. "It's the blood," he said, his voice flat. It's not just memories. It's their last moments, their deaths. The charge nurse looked at Aaron, then at the chart. Call the blood bank, she ordered. See if they have any notes on this unit. Aaron called. The tech answered, his voice thick with sleep. Unit B 4954, Aaron said. Do you have any donor notes on it? A long pause. Hold on, the tech said. Let me check the internal profile. He came back a minute later. Donor was a 22-year-old male, the tech said. Died in a boating accident 2 weeks ago. Drowning was the cause of death. Family consented to donation. Aaron hung up the phone. Drowning, she told the charge nurse. The donor drowned. The charge nurse stared at the bag of blood. Stop the infusion, she said. Flush the line. Get a stat lab draw. We're holding all transfusions until GI can reevaluate. Erin did as she was told. The next morning, before she left, she went to the blood bank herself. The tech from the night before was there, looking pale. I looked up the donor profiles for the whole batch, he said, handing her a printout. 32-year-old male, recurring O-positive donor, collapsed in parking lot of donor center 2 weeks after latest donation. Presumed sudden cardiac death. Family consented to continued use of previously collected units. No evidence of bloodborne pathogen or product contamination. Units cleared for use after review. 32. Male. Sudden cardiac event. Could be anything, genetic defect, hidden disease, pure bad luck. But when Erin closed her eyes, she could almost taste cheap beer and hear the screech of tires from Daniel's earlier description. Car accident, drowning, choir. She didn't have access to those death records. That information lived in a different world. EMS, police, medical examiner offices. She was just a nurse on nights, in a building that barely wanted to acknowledge that patients could have nightmares, much less borrowed deaths. A notification blinked on her screen. New lab result, hemoglobin, Reese, Daniel. She clicked it. 7.2. Higher. Better. Enough to make GI back off for a few hours, at least. Enough to not justify another unit for now. Behind her, someone spoke. You're the one with bed 9, right? She turned. The blood bank tech leaned in the doorway again. Jacket gone. Scrub top wrinkled. Yeah, Aaron said. Why? I checked the batch logs, he said. Those units? B4941 and B4954? They're both from donors flagged in our internal notes as posthumous profile conflict. She stared. What does that even mean? She asked. It means, he said slowly, that when they did follow-up calls, their stories didn't match. The one from the accident. Family said he'd been sober for years, but his blood alcohol at autopsy was through the roof. The drowning, listed as a boating accident, but the injuries looked different. More like entrapment. Foul play not ruled out. He lowered his voice. We're not supposed to talk about this floor side, he added. But you asked if transfusions ever mess with people's heads. Sometimes I wonder if the blood carries more than we can test for. Erin felt the hairs on her arms stand up. If that's true, she said, why are we still using it? Because it's typed, screened, and not infectious, he said bleakly. And we need it. That guy in there? Without those bags, he'd probably already be dead. She looked back toward bed 9's door. And with them? She asked. With them, the tech replied. He gets to live long enough to figure out how many other lives he's carrying. At change of shift, the day nurse assigned to bed 9 arrived. A woman in her 40s with a no-nonsense bun and the face of someone who'd seen too many sunrises from the wrong side of a hospital window. Erin gave report. She went through the whole clinical picture first. GI bleed, transfusions, pressors, labs, GI plan, lines, vitals. Only then did she add carefully, every unit of blood we've given him tonight has come with personality changes. Not just mood, memories, scenes he describes in detail that don't belong to him. Car crash, church collapse, drowning. The timing lines up almost exactly with the transfusions. The day nurse raised an eyebrow. Delirium? She asked. His orientation is intact, Aaron said. Names, dates, place, situation. It's only the content of what he feels and remembers that changes. And blood bank quietly confirmed that some of those donors died in ways that sound a lot like what he's describing. Silence stretched between them. You want me to chart haunted blood? The day nurse asked finally, not unkindly. I want you to know it didn't start until after the 3rd unit, Aaron answered. Before that, he was just scared and tired. After that, he became crowded. The day nurse glanced toward bed 9. I'll keep an eye on it, she said. But you know how rounds go. They'll care about his hemoglobin and his BUN and not much else. Aaron nodded. She knew. Still, as she clocked out, she couldn't shake the feeling that leaving the building didn't mean leaving the story behind. Somewhere in that ICU, a man was lying in bed 9 with 4 strangers' final moments swimming in his veins. And no one except her seemed particularly concerned with who they had been. Aaron told herself she wouldn't go back. Night shift was over. She'd given report. She'd handed off the beeping monitors and the bleeding gut and the haunted transfusions to someone else. Her badge was already tucked into her bag. She was halfway down the main corridor toward the exit when she stopped. The hospital's early morning light had that gray, watery quality that made everything look like it was under a thin layer of dust. Orderlies pushed breakfast carts. A transporter rolled a patient toward radiology. Somewhere, a code paged on another floor that wasn't her problem anymore. But bed 9 still was in a way she couldn't name. She turned around. Instead of taking the elevator down to the parking garage, she rode it back up to the lab level. The blood bank was quieter now that their rush was over. Boxes were stacked, labels checked, machines humming in a low, constant way. The tech from the night shift was shrugging into his jacket. You again, he said. You're off, aren't you? Should be, Aaron replied. One more question and I'll stop bugging you. I promise. He looked at her for a long second, then sighed. Shoot. You said 2 donors are definitely accident types, she said. Car and drowning. What about the others? Especially #B4927. The first one that made him talk about church. The tech scratched his jaw. Give me a second, he said. He disappeared into the back where the deeper systems lived, the ones behind the simple screens of O-positive cross-match compatible. When he came back, his expression had changed. #B4927 came from an internal donor, he said slowly. Meaning, someone who was a patient here on this campus. Aaron's skin prickled. Patient where? She asked. ICU, he answered. Different side, other wing. About a year ago. He checked the paper in his hand. 58-year-old male, long-standing cardiac disease, multiple admissions, he read. Religious, apparently. Chaplain notes all over his chart. Crashed after surgery. Massive hemorrhage. Code called in the ICU. Time of death logged just after some big family prayer thing. He glanced up. Anyway, he signed up as a donor before all that. The tech finished. They collected a qualifying unit not too long before he decompensated. It was fully screened and stored. Used eventually. Or being used now. Aaron swallowed. In the same ICU? She asked quietly. Same floor, he said. Bed numbers change. Cases don't. She thought of Daniel humming a hymn he shouldn't know, describing the color of stained glass in a church he'd never entered. Do you have a name? She asked. Not one I can give you, he replied. Privacy and all that. She nodded. It was the answer she expected. It still felt like a door slamming. Look, the tech added, softening. If it helps, blood is still just blood. Cells, plasma, proteins. We don't have a lab test for unresolved business or last thoughts. Whatever's happening in that bed, it's off the books. Off the books, she thought, but not off him. Aaron went home, slept badly, dreamed of red waves spilling from plastic bags and a dozen voices stacked on top of each other, all trying to be heard through the same throat. She woke before she had to, heart racing. The echo of a hymn she didn't know still ringing in her head. By late afternoon, she couldn't resist checking her email. The ICU group thread had a brief update from the day charge nurse. Bed 9, Reese. Hemoglobin stable, No further transfusions this shift. GI scoped, found slow bleed, clipped, point clinically improved, less tachycardic. Still reporting weird dreams. Plan, monitor overnight, downgrade if stable. Weird dreams. That was all it became in the daytime language of medicine. Weird dreams. When Erin came back the following night, she did what every nurse does. She checked the assignment board first. Her name was next to several familiar beds. Bed 3, Bed 6, Bed 11, not Bed 9. Someone else had him. Still, as she walked past his room at the start of shift, she couldn't help looking in. Daniel was sitting up a little more now, angles of the bed raised, color better. No blood hanging on his pole. The central line was still there, but the pump was quieter. No pressors, just standard fluids. He saw her in the doorway, raised a hand slightly. "Hey," he rasped. "You're the one from the night." She stepped in just over the threshold. "From a night," she corrected. "How are you feeling?" "Lighter," he said. "Less like I'm dragging half a graveyard around in my chest." She managed a small smile. "Any more episodes?" she asked. "Not since they stopped the blood," he said. "Dreams, yeah, but that's just ICU, right? Monitors beeping, everything buzzing. No dark, no quiet." He paused. "They told me I said some weird things," he added. "You especially, that I talked about accidents and drowning and churches." "You did," she said gently. "In detail." "I don't remember the details," he admitted. "Just flashes. It all feels like someone else who wore me for a while and then left their coat behind." He looked at her sharply. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "When I get out of here," he said, "do they go with me? Or did I leave them in those bags when they ran dry?" She didn't have an answer he could chart. "I think," she said slowly, "that your mind was trying to make sense of a lot of stress, and it borrowed whatever it could." He held her gaze. "Do you believe that?" he asked. She could have lied. Night shift nurses lied all the time in small ways to soothe things that couldn't be fixed with morphine or orders. Instead, she said, "I believe some of what you felt didn't start with you. I don't know if it stays. I don't know if it fades. I just know you're the one who has to live with it now." His eyes dropped to his hands. "They feel quieter," he said. "But sometimes, when I close my eyes, I still see moments. A steering wheel, blue water, colored glass, and faces that aren't mine." He took a breath. "I'm trying to be grateful," he went on. "Someone out there bled so that I don't have to. But it's hard to feel grateful when you've seen what their last 30 seconds looked like." A few days later, Bed 9 was empty. Fresh sheets. No name on the whiteboard. No personal items. The board at the nurse's station said he'd been transferred to a step-down unit. Eventually, she heard he went home, back to his own bed, his own shower, his own mirrors. Life such as it was. On a different night, during a different shift, Erin walked past the hospital chapel on her way to grab a coffee. It was small, tucked near the main lobby. Stained glass windows, rows of simple chairs, a wooden cross on the wall. Inside, a few people sat scattered in the dim light, heads bowed, hands clasped. A quiet melody drifted from a speaker in the corner, some pre-recorded sacred track that played on repeat. She froze. She knew that tune, Kyrie eleison, the same phrase Daniel had spoken with a tongue that was supposed to be unfamiliar. She stood there for a long moment, listening. Could he have heard it here, half-conscious, being wheeled past? Could his brain have grabbed it and stitched it into a blood-soaked dream? Maybe. Or maybe the man whose cells now floated in Daniel's veins had sat in this very room. Once, humming along before signing a donor card. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. New admission, ICU bed 4. Sepsis, possible surgery, multi-transfusion risk. Back to work. Back to lines and pumps and units with barcodes and carefully anonymized tragedy. That night, as she hung a single bag of blood on another patient, Erin found herself staring at the label a little longer than usual. Type, expiration date, unit number, collection site. No mention of who it used to belong to. No mention of what they had feared, loved, regretted. She primed the tubing, tapped the filter, connected the line like she had 1,000 times before. But before she started the pump, she did something she had never done on a transfusion in all her years of ICU. Under her breath, too soft for anyone else to hear over the monitors, she whispered, "Thank you, whoever you were." The pump clicked on. Red began to move from one life into another. In the corner of the room, the monitor glowed, numbers tracking the exchange with clinical indifference. Blood, Aaron thought, was supposed to carry oxygen, nutrients, waste. Science said that was all. But after bed 9, after watching a man wake up with pieces of 4 strangers' last seconds on his tongue, she wasn't sure that was the whole story. And somewhere, maybe in a house with new prescriptions and follow-up appointments taped to the fridge, a man named Daniel Reese would lie awake at 3 a.m., staring at his ceiling, humming a hymn he never learned, trying to decide how much of what he felt was his, and how much of it came from every blood bag that had helped keep his heart beating.